Or Purnima, Hare Krishna. We're going to continue reading about Mahaprabhu. And we're going to do a little Nitai Gauranga Kirtan. I think that's appropriate. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And then we're going to continue our reading from it's not the introduction, it's a live sketch in the beginning of Bhagavatam, and then we elaborate a little bit on it, as we've been doing. So, Hare Krishna. Just give me one moment. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Okay. Gauranga, 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 Gauranga. Let's just say Gauranga, everything will be just fine. I think. That's what we're told. Everything's going to be fine if you say Gauranga. Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. Gauranga likes to give love. He likes to give love. Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, 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 Nityananda, Nityananda. Now I'm in my temple. Can you hear? The big temple. Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. 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 Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gaura, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. 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 Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gauranga Gaura Hari Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai 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 Gauranga Gaura Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Nitai Gaura Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gauranga Nityananda. Nitai, 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 Nitai. Gauranga, Gauranga, Gaura, 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 Gaura. 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 Welcome to all of you. Hare Krishna. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hari, Gaura Hari. So, I have bookmarked where we're supposed to read. Let's see if it works. If it does, we go to Tools, Bookmark, Bookmark 1, go to, and ta-da, there we are. So we are reading from the introduction to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we're talking about his... No, it's taking me back to what we already read. Oh my, that is weird. Reading about creating some disturbance with the Brahmins. Started his own school. Yeah, okay, so now we come to the story of a Pandit named Keshava Kashmiri. I guess it means his name is Keshava and he's from Kashmir, or his family's from Kashmir, or that was it. Anyway, that's his name, Keshava Kashmiri. During this time, a great scholar, Kashmir scholar, that explains it. He's a Kashmir scholar. Either that has some significance, like a Rhodes scholar, or he's from Kashmir. That I can't say. I would think it's the latter. Name is Keshava Kashmiri. Came to Navadvip to hold discussions on the Shastras. The Kashmir Pandit was a champion scholar, and he had traveled to all places of learning in India. Finally, he came to Navadvip to contest the learned Pandits there. The Pandits of Navadvip decided to match Nimai Pandit, Lord Chaitanya, with the Kashmiri Pandit. In other words, if Lord Chaitanya won, then the good name of Navadvip would stay intact, so they chose their best Pandit. Thinking that if Nimai Pandit were defeated, they would have another chance to debate with the scholar. For Nimai Pandit was the only boy. Oh no, so I misunderstood. They didn't understand it the way I understood it. Yeah, so because he's a boy, then the Pandit wouldn't think he had conquered Navadvip. That's what they were thinking. And if the Kashmir Pandit were defeated, then they would even be more glorified, because people would proclaim that a mere boy of Navadvip had defeated a champion scholar who was famous throughout India. Anyway, the idea of keeping Navadvip high on the charts as a place of learning, that was their strategy. It so happened that Nimai Pandit met Keshava Kashmiri while strolling on the banks of the Ganges. So Lord Chaitanya already knew what he was up to, so he started playing with him. And we had told this story, but now we're going to read it. The Lord requested him to compose a Sanskrit verse in praise of the Ganges. And the Pandit, within a short time, composed 100 shlokas, reciting the verses like a storm and showing the strength of his vast learning. Nimai Pandit at once memorized all the shlokas without an error. He quoted the 64th shloka and pointed out certain rhetorical and literary irregularities. He particularly questioned the Pandit's use of the word Bhavani Bhartu. He pointed out that the use of this word was redundant. Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva. And who else can be her Bharta or husband? He also, so Bharta means husband and Bhavani means wife of Lord Shiva. It's redundant. The husband, she already said she's a wife of, and then who's her husband? He also pointed out several other discrepancies, and the Kashmiri Pandit was struck with wonder. He was astonished that a mere student of grammar could point out the literary mistakes of an erudite scholar. Although this matter was ended prior to any public meeting, the news spread like wildfire all over Navadvip. But finally, Keshava Kashmiri was ordered in a dream by Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to submit to the Lord, and thus the Kashmir Pandit became a follower of the Lord. You know, one of the missions of Lord Chaitanya was to give the scholars, I don't want to say defeat the scholars, but give the scholars Krishna consciousness. In that culture, usually you had to defeat them first. But Mahaprabhu did it in a quite humble way, and he didn't want to embarrass the scholars. So as we mentioned last in the other class, he said, well, let's just go home for now, and we'll talk tomorrow. And then that evening, Keshava Kashmiri had the dream, and so then he surrendered. That was Mahaprabhu's mission. Get the scholars. That was Prabhupada's mission also. Convince the influencers. Who are the influencers? The scientists, the academics. The Lord was then married with great pomp and gaiety, and at this time he began to preach the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord at Navadvip. Navadvip. Nobodvipa. Some of the Brahmanas became envious of his popularity, and they put many hindrances on his path. They were so jealous that they finally took the matter before the Muslim magistrate at Navadvip. Bengal was then governed by the Pathans, and the governor of that province was Nawab Hussain Shah. The Muslim magistrate of Navadvip took the complaints of the Brahmins seriously. You know, Mahaprabhu is ruining everything, because you have to be a Brahmin to get mantras. And plus, who would just say, just chant Hare Krishna. You can also be a Brahmin. That would put the Brahmins out of business. At least their monopoly would be ended. It's all about rituals and proper execution of mantra, proper chanting of mantra and ritual and samskara. Mahaprabhu is ruining their reputation and their livelihood, in a sense. Or maybe not in a sense, he was. Not intentionally, of course. The Muslim magistrate of Navadvip took up the complaints of the Brahmanas seriously. And at first he warned the followers of Nimai Pandit not to chant loudly the name of Hari. They would say something like, why are you bothering God chanting his name so loudly? But Lord Chaitanya asked his followers to disobey the orders of the Qazi, and they went on with their Sankirtan chanting party as usual. And this was happening in Australia. The devotees were getting arrested. And Prabhupada said, that's okay. You can chant in jail. Just keep going out. You keep going out, keep getting arrested, go to court. Eventually, we were allowed to chant. So Prabhupada had us follow. Well, of course, I wasn't there. But in other places also, similar things were happening, and he had us follow the same idea. Lord Chaitanya asked his followers to disobey the orders of the Qazi, and they went on with their Sankirtan. The magistrate then sent constables who interrupted a Sankirtan and broke some of the mridangas, drums. When Nimai Pandit heard of this incident, he organized a party for civil disobedience. He is the pioneer of the civil disobedience movement in India for the right cause. He organized a procession to get the British out of India. No, it doesn't say that. Just wanted to see if you're awake. He organized a procession of 100,000 men with thousands of mridangas and kartals, hand cymbals, and this procession passed over the roads of Navadvip in defiance of the Qazi who had issued the order. All right, that's a big procession. I'm going to give you that number again. 100,000 men. If you've been to Navadvip, it's hard to imagine where they all fit. That must have been a couple miles of people. I mean, someone can figure this out. The streets are like, I would say, we don't even know how wide the streets were in those days. How wide could they be? 10 meters, 15 meters. Right? So let's say you got 30 people across. 30, 60, 90, 100. So you get like every yard. Maybe you could fit 100 people in every yard. 1,000 people, 100 yards. 10,000 people, 1,000 yards. So like 10,000 football fields long. Something like that. If someone's a better mathematician than I am, then you can give me your calculation. Finally, the procession reached the house of the Qazi, who went upstairs out of fear of the masses. As I said, if you read the history, I think maybe it's in Chaitanya Bhagavat, the devotees were angry. Qazis, coming out, stopping Harinam, breaking their mridangas, or ordering Harinam be stopped, ordering that their mridangas be broken. They were mad. They were like, let's kill this guy, or let's do some damage. But Mahaprabhu was like, no, this is going to be peaceful. There's going to be no violence here. Finally, the procession reached the house of the Qazi, who went upstairs out of fear of the masses, a real Kshatriya, right? The great crowds assembled at Qazi's house displayed, here Prabhupada says, the great crowds assembled at the Qazi's house displayed a violent temper, but the Lord asked them to be peaceful. Isn't that interesting? Like, devotees were really angry. You're stopping the Sankirtan? They weren't coming there to do a coup d'etat or anything, but they were coming to protest, and that's a big protest. At this time, the Qazi came down. The Lord asked them to be peaceful, so they calmed down, and then the Qazi came down and tried to pacify the Lord by addressing him as his nephew. Qazi was afraid. He was concerned, definitely. The Qazi pointed out that he referred to Nilambar Chakrabarti as uncle, and that consequently Srimati Sachi Devi, the mother of Nimai Pandit, was his cousin's sister. I don't know how that's possible. He's a Muslim and they're not. Maybe it had something to do with conversions happening of the Hindus. Anyway. Sachi was his cousin's sister, was his cousin. Interracial marriage? What's going on here? Recent conversions? We may never know. He asked the Lord whether his sister's son could be angry at his maternal uncle. And the Lord replied that since the Qazi was his maternal uncle, he should receive his nephew well at his home. In this way, the issue was mitigated, and the two learned scholars began a long discussion on the Quran and Hindu Shastras. So, Qazi's a scholar. The Lord raised the question of cow killing, and the Qazi properly answered him by referring to the Quran. In turn, the Qazi also questioned the Lord about cow sacrifice in the Vedas. And the Lord replied that such sacrifice as mentioned in the Vedas is not actually cow killing. In that sacrifice, the old bull or cow was sacrificed for the sake of receiving a fresh young life by the power of Vedic mantra. If the mantras are chanted properly, cow enters the fire, comes out rejuvenated. That could be useful for old Sankirtan devotees. They walk in the fire and they get like a 20-year-old body and they get back out there. Although I've never read that was done on humans. And also, when Kali Yuga began, then one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga was that the Brahmins were no longer bona fide. They didn't have the austerity with which to get the power to chant the mantras properly. And if you put a cow into a fire and you chant the mantra properly, it comes out with a new body. If you chant it improperly, it dies. And there's a story like that. Perhaps you've heard there's a story in which one cow died due to the improper chanting of mantra. And it just barbecued. It just went in the fire, and one of the Brahmins, when he smelt it, of course for us it's a horrible odor, because we know it's the odor of flesh. But he was attracted to that odor, and he buried it to come back later. And, of course he couldn't eat it in the presence of others, but he buried it because he wanted to eat it. And as the story goes, as I remember, when he went to dig it up, the demigods came. Or onions and garlic were growing, and they said, just mix onions and garlic with your vegetables and it'll taste like this. So don't eat this. Anyway, that's a story that Srila Prabhupada told when once they went to a man's house, a respectable man's house, and Prabhupada graced them by taking a meal. And the meal had onions, and he didn't want to offend them by not eating. And the devotees were saying, but Prabhupada, this has onions in it. And the devotee who was there told me the story. He said, Prabhupada said, yes, this sabji is very good. Please take. And the devotees were bewildered. And at that time, Prabhupada told that story about onions and garlic. There's some other, I've heard other renditions, nuances of that story. But this was the story that Prabhupada told at this lunch. Interesting, isn't it? In fact, in Kali Yuga, all yajnas, sacrifices, are forbidden because they are useless attempts by foolish men. In Kali Yuga, only the Sankirtan yajna is recommended for all practical purposes. So it's interesting. The reason no other yajnas are recommended because they're difficult and nobody's qualified to do them. And so, sometimes we think, chanting is difficult, chanting so many rounds, etc. But these yajnas were more troublesome, and they were very expensive, time-consuming and expensive, and you needed qualified Brahmins, so no one has the money now. We do these yajnas still, but it's really the holy name, the chanting of the holy name is the real yajna. It's the real thing. And where are the Brahmins? Prabhupada said maybe a few real Brahmins exist. You may see other Brahmins, and if they're Vaishnavas, yes. But just regular Brahmins, they may be Paka, but in doing the ritual, but in their own life, maybe not so Paka. But anyway, Prabhupada said there's hardly any real Brahmins left, at least Brahmins on the level who could chant these mantras properly. So the yajnas are not going to work. And yajna was, it was Treta Yuga. That was the process. So we've got it easy, for sure. And we don't have to be so qualified. Okay. In Kali Yuga, only the Sankirtan Yoga is recommended for all practical purposes. Speaking in this way, the Lord finally convinced the Kazi, who became the Lord's follower. Hare Krishna. Fantastico. The Kazi thenceforth declared that no one should hinder the Sankirtan movement which was started by the Lord, and the Kazi left this order in his will for the sake of progeny. The Kazi's tomb still exists in the area of Navadvip, and Hindu pilgrims go there to show their respects. The Kazi's descendants are residents, and they never objected to Sankirtan, even during the Hindu-Muslim riot days. Good or good? That's really interesting that it's stayed intact, isn't it? I find that quite... You would think, they would... Some Muslim ruler would come, but they've been obedient to that. Some Muslim ruler would come and say, well, we're not going to do that anymore. Kazi became converted. What about all the other Muslims? What happened? I mean, if you're a Muslim at the time of Mahaprabhu living in Mayapur, Navadvip, you must have done something right. Why not all Muslims go back to Godhead? No problem. Sometimes Prabhupada said that people can unknowingly become Krishna conscious by saying, "Hey, you Hare Krishnas, get out of here," or something like that. But they're chanting, so unknowingly making advancement. And Mahaprabhu came to deliver the whole world, so everybody gets to go. Unless they're kicking and screaming, but some, as Prabhupada said, some unknowingly go. That's special mercy. This incident shows clearly that the Lord was not a so-called timid Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is a fearless devotee of the Lord, and for the right cause he can take any step suitable for the purpose. Arjuna was also a Vaishnava devotee of Lord Krishna, and he fought valiantly for the satisfaction of the Lord. Similarly, Bajrangaji or Hanuman, Bajrangaji, gotta move my cursor. Bajrangaji or Hanuman was also a devotee of Lord Rama, and he gave lessons to the non-devotee party of Ravana. The principles of Vaishnavism are to satisfy the Lord by all means. A Vaishnava is by nature a non-violent, peaceful living being and has all the good qualities of God. But when the non-devotee blasphemes the Lord or his devotee, the Vaishnava never tolerates such impudency. So that, mood, that defiant mood, or that mood of fighting back or protecting devotees, even to the point of using physical, I don't want to say violence, just let's say physical strength. And Prabhupada saying a Vaishnava, if he has to, he will do what's necessary to protect Vaishnavism and protect devotees. So he's not a sissy. But at the same time, Prabhupada says he has all good qualities, but if necessary, he will act in any way for the satisfaction of the Lord. And it's also a sign of detachment, because you could become attached to being peaceful. You could become attached to being humble. Of course, we should always be humble, but humble in the sense of being so tolerant that you tolerate something you shouldn't tolerate. So that, you could say, is something that becomes an attachment to that kind of humility, because humility is, we understand humility doesn't have what's the word? An exact behavior in every situation. So sometimes humility may mean defending a devotee. So, and if one if it's necessary that one exhibits some anger or some force and one doesn't, then that's not good. So we have to become detached to acting in any one particular way if that particular way isn't advantageous for the Lord's service. So we can be very powerful and strong and be humble, because humility ultimately means we're doing what Krishna wants. So that's what's being described here. A devotee is nonviolent, but not always. And so he's not attached to being nonviolent. Arjuna was attached to being nonviolent, which was awkward because he's a Kshatriya. But even as a Brahmin, we're not attached to being nonviolent if there's a reason to be violent or to exhibit an attitude, you could say. Hey, you got an attitude, Prabhu. Sometimes you need an attitude to accomplish service. And so if you don't take the attitude, then that's the problem. And if you don't need the attitude to accomplish the service, and you take the attitude, that's the problem. You understand, right? I'm going to move the camera so my head is at the lotus feet, sort of Prabhupada. Okay. So this is detachment is interesting, because sometimes detachment means being detached from so-called good qualities, because in a certain situation, those so-called good qualities will not satisfy Guru or Krishna, because you have to do something different. You have to be aggressive, perhaps. You have to be protective. Anyway, you understand the principle. It's like I'm saying. Sometimes I say, excuse me. Sometimes you have to be detached from being detached. Like sometimes, okay, detachment's a good thing, but sometimes it's not a good thing. Sometimes it's not in the interest of the service of Krishna. So then you have to be detached from being detached. If you know what I mean. Prabhu, you're too detached. You need to become detached from being so detached. Like, I just want to chant Hare Krishna. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit down. No, you need to go out. People need to hear the holy name. You need to become detached from your detachment. Sometimes that's required. Okay. Sometimes we need to become attached to what we're detached from. Interesting, right? Reverse detachment. Reverse attachment. All detachment is not good, all attachment is not bad. After this incident, the Lord began to preach and propagate his Bhagavat Dharma, or Sankirtan movement, more vigorously. And whoever stood against the propagation of the Yuga Dharma, or duty of the age, was properly punished by various types of chastisement. No one should stand in the way of the Sankirtan movement. Two Brahmin gentlemen named Chapala and Gopal also happened to be maternal uncles of the Lord. And they were inflicted with leprosy by way of chastisement. And later, when they were repentant, they were accepted by the Lord. You know, they were criticizing, at least Gopal. I don't know about the other one. Chapala, I thought it was one person, Gopal Chapala. Anyway, there was a Gopal who criticized Srivas. He came down with leprosy. And he begged Mahaprabhu, please cure me, please save me. Mahaprabhu said, no, you're an offender. You're getting this reaction. You have to ask forgiveness from Srivas. That's why you're suffering. So that's a kind of chastisement. Of course, he could have cured him, but no. This is a reaction to an offense. So that was the principle. And so Mahaprabhu taught a principle, but also showed in his own heart, how he feels towards those who offend devotees. Later, when they were repentant, they were accepted by the Lord. So, I'm sorry I offended Srivas. Srivas, please forgive me. Okay, now you're accepted. In the course of his preaching work, he used to send daily all his followers, including Srila Nityananda Prabhu and Thakur Haridas, two chief whips of his party, from door to door to preach the Srimad Bhagavatam. All of Navadvip was surcharged with his Sankirtan movement. And his headquarters were situated at the house of Srivas Thakur and Sri Advaita Prabhu, two of his chief householder disciples. These two learned heads of the Brahmana community were the most ardent supporters of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Sri Advaita Prabhu was the chief cause for the advent of the Lord. When Advaita Prabhu saw the total human society was full of materialistic activities and devoid of devotional service, which alone could save mankind from the threefold miseries of material existence, he, out of his causeless compassion for the age-worn human society, worn down by Kali Yuga, prayed fervently for the incarnation of the Lord and continually worshipped the Lord with water of the Ganges and leaves of the holy Tulsi tree. As far as preaching work in the Sankirtan movement was concerned, everyone was expected to do his daily share according to the order of the Lord. So we know Advaita Prabhu called the Lord to come down. Advaita Prabhu did not think he alone could save people in Kali Yuga. He assessed the situation. He said, things are so bad. That this is 500 years ago. I was reading last night the condition of the world 500 years ago. The description of the environment in which Lord Chaitanya was descending and why he was descending, because it was such a materialistic environment. And it sounded like it was describing 2021. It's very interesting. It said everyone was just interested in materialism. No one was interested in religion except for religious ritual. Everyone was just competing to get ahead. Wealth, prestige, and so forth. It was identical to the description of what's going on now. And that's 500 years ago. So, we would think that things would be much different 500 years ago in India. But apparently not so. I mean, obviously different than today, but in spirit, same mentality. Today I'm drinking hot water. If you boil water, it's healthier, easier to digest. If you wouldn't think that you could have trouble digesting water, but it's lighter. Recommended in the Ayurveda. So, we are now leading up to the story of Nityananda Prabhu saving Jagai and Madai. And now, the funny thing, well, I don't know if you think it's funny, but it is kind of funny. I think you have to excuse me. I think there's something in the air. Usually it comes in the summer. And just so you can empathize with me, some allergic reaction, which makes it feel like there's ants crawling inside my nose. So you have to excuse me if I'm always squeezing it. That's what it feels like. So, I don't know if you know this, but they had to set up so to speak, a special department with extra help and work over hours to keep track of the sins of Jagai and Madai, because they were so sinful. It was like with normal people, it's easy to calculate their sins. But for Jagai and Madai, they had to have a special department with, the fastest computers and 24/7 staff and et cetera, et cetera. Isn't that okay? We're taking a Hollywood, a dramatic license here, but they were overworked keeping track of Jagaya and Madai's sins. It was just off the charts. That's how sinful they were. It's just so, you don't think like you're that bad. There are people a lot worse than you. You're not the most fallen, or that you're not the most sinful. Jagaya and Madai were far greater sinners. Once Nityananda Prabhu and Srila Haridas Thakur were walking down a main road, and on the way they saw a roaring crowd assembled. Upon inquiring from passers-by, they understood that two brothers named Jaghai and Madhai were creating a public disturbance in a drunken state. They also heard that these two brothers were born in a respectable Brahmana family, but that because of low association they had turned into debauchees of the worst type, basically gangsters. Mafiosos, just abusing everyone and controlling the town. It's interesting that nobody could deal with them. They had taken over. They were not only drunkards, but also meat-eaters, woman hunters, dacoits, and sinners of all description. Srila Nityananda Prabhu heard all of these stories and decided that these two fallen souls must be the first to be delivered. If they were delivered from their sinful life, then the good name of Lord Chaitanya would even still be more glorified. So his idea was like, this was, you could say in modern terms, this was a branding event. If we can save Jagai and Madai, then Mahaprabhu will be branded as Patita Pavana. Like, he can save anybody. If you can save them, you can save anybody. And so, it sounds funny, but that's what Nityananda was thinking. It was like a branding, that Mahaprabhu will be famous as the savior of the fallen, which means anyone in any condition can take to Krishna consciousness. Anyone can get the mercy, and this will prove it. Thinking in this way, Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas pushed their way through the crowd and asked the two brothers to chant the holy name of the Lord. The drunken brothers became enraged upon this request and attacked Nityananda Prabhu with filthy language. Both brothers chased them a considerable distance. Get out of here, I'll kill you. And then Nityananda Prabhu and Thakur Haridas had to run away for their lives, or so it seems. I mean, this is Leela, but to the common man, they were, it looked like Jagai and Madai would have either killed them or harmed them significantly. The drunken brothers became enraged upon this request, attacked Nityananda Prabhu with filthy language. Both brothers chased them a considerable distance. They were so drunk they just pooped out. In the evening, the report of the preaching work was submitted to the Lord, and he was glad to learn that Nityananda and Haridas had attempted to deliver such a stupid pair of fellows. The next day, Nityananda Prabhu went to see the brothers, and I think, as the story goes, Thakur Haridas is like, we're going to get ourselves killed here. We're lucky we didn't get killed yesterday, and now you're going back. This is not good. Anyway, they had that conversation the previous day while they were running. Why did you get me in all this trouble? You're always getting me in trouble. Thakur Haridas was complaining. And they're running. You can see the movie, they're running, and Jagai and Madai are behind them. We're going to get you. Stop. And they, and Nityananda and Thakur Haridas are running, and they're having this conversation. Why you take me all these places? Why are you doing this? You're risking our life. This is crazy. And you look behind them. Stop! And then they just kind of crash. They're just fat, drunk, out of shape, obviously. And Thakur Haridas was complaining to Lord Chaitanya, look, you send me out with this Nitai. He's like a madman, avadut, It's going to get me killed. But anyway, in spite of all of that, Nityananda's back the next day. The next day, Nityananda Prabhu went to see the brothers, and as soon as he approached them, one of them threw a piece of earthen pot at him. This struck him on the forehead, and immediately blood began to flow. But Nityananda Prabhu was so kind that instead of protesting this heinous act, he said, "It does not matter that you have thrown this stone at me. I still request you to chant the holy name." One of the brothers, Jagai, he was the one who didn't throw it, was astonished to see this behavior of Nityananda Prabhu. And he at once fell down at his feet and asked him to pardon his sinful brother. You know, they were raised as Brahmins, so they still had, obviously, that culture somewhere deep down inside. They could understand what a sadhu is. And he was just, it's interesting, isn't it? How, we've talked a lot about how behavior is so important. Often much more important than what you say is what you do. And here we're seeing an example of it. Even Jagai is, as you could say, mesmerized. Prabhupada says, astonished by this behavior. He's bleeding, he's hurt. Normal person would fight back or run away out of fear. And Nityananda's, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Like no resentment at all. I just want you to chant. So Jagai is now asking for forgiveness for his brother, of course, for himself as well. When Madhai again attempted to hurt Nityananda Prabhu, Jagai stopped him and implored him to fall down at his feet. In the meantime, the news of Nityananda's injury reached the Lord. So this incident where they're surrendering, it couldn't have happened in 30 seconds, which seems like that's all it would take. Between Nitai getting hit and this whole thing happening, there was some time, enough time going on for Mahaprabhu to hear and Mahaprabhu to come. In the meantime, the news of Nityananda's injury reached the Lord, who at once hurried to the spot in a fiery and angry mood. The Lord immediately invoked his Sudarshan Chakra, the Lord's ultimate weapon shaped like a wheel, to kill the sinners. But Nityananda Prabhu reminded him of his mission. The mission of the Lord was to deliver the hopelessly fallen souls of Kali Yuga, and the brothers Jagai and Madhai were typical examples of these fallen souls. 99% of the population of this age resembles these brothers, despite high birth and mundane respectability. According to the verdict of the revealed scriptures, the total population of the world in this age will be of the lowest Shudra quality or even lower. It should be noted that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never acknowledged the stereotyped caste system by birthright. Rather, he strictly followed the verdict of the Shastras in the matter of one's sarup, or real identity. It doesn't matter externally what position you are, but everyone's sarup is devotee of Krishna. And everyone, therefore, should be given equal access to the process and the practices and the knowledge of devotional service, sadhana, chanting, and so forth. Not that everyone is qualified to chant Brahminical mantras, Vedic mantras, but to chant Hare Krishna, for sure, that's for everyone. So, first point that's being made here is Nityananda's mission was now successful, because when Mahaprabhu wanted to kill these boys, Nityananda said, well, if you kill them, everybody's like them, so you'll have to kill everybody, because everyone's sinful. And your mission in this age is not to kill people. That was the last age. You killed the non-devotees, the demons, the miscreants who were attacking you, who were against religious principles. They were killed. But in this age, your weapon is your beauty. Your weapon are your associates. Your weapon is the holy name. In this age, it's all about compassion, so you can't kill them. So Mahaprabhu took away his chakra, his Sudarshan chakra. Said, okay. And then, yeah. So I'll read on. I don't want, because I could be telling what we're going to read. So let's read on, and then if there's anything more to say. I mean, there's so much more to say for this story, but you get the general idea that this story was definitely a branding for Mahaprabhu and an example of the Sankirtan movement. That the idea of the Sankirtan movement is that everyone is offered the opportunity to become Krishna conscious without any necessary qualification, even if they're Jagai and Madhai. If they're willing to take it up, then we're willing to give it to them. That's the idea. When the Lord was invoking his Sudarshan chakra, Srila Nityananda Prabhu was imploring him to forgive the two brothers. Both the brothers fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord and begged his pardon for their gross behavior. The Lord was also asked by Nityananda Prabhu to accept these repenting souls, and the Lord agreed to accept them on one condition. Well, actually, he said, I will accept Jagai, but I won't accept Madhai, because Madhai injured my devotee. And Nityananda said, please accept him. Give him my pious activities. Whatever is required, please accept him. So it was only because of Nityananda's plea that Madhai was accepted. The Lord agreed to accept them on one condition, that they henceforward completely give up all their sinful activities and habits of debauchery. Both the brothers agreed and promised to give up all their sinful habits. And the kind Lord accepted them and did not again refer to their past misdeeds. So this was their initiation. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it says that this time the Lord's body turned black because he accepted all their sins. And the idea here, one idea we get, is that at initiation, the spiritual master, the fire, Vishnu, and so forth, burn up, the sins are burned up in the fire. The spiritual master agrees to take on the sins. And then the disciple agrees never again to commit sinful activity. That's the initiation. And so that's what actually happened here in a more unofficial capacity, but that's actually what happened. And then there was so much sin to take on that Mahaprabhu's body turned black. So you promise to follow the principles, you promise never again to go back to your material life, and that's what they did. This is the specific kindness of Lord Chaitanya. In this age, no one can say that he is free from sin. It is impossible for anyone to say this. And the Bible says, all men have sinned and come short of the glory of the Lord. So that we agree with. But there are four major sins that we can give up when we surrender. That seems to be a difference in Christianity that there are sins, definitely, which we should give up. Maybe it's not such a difference, but maybe the way it's taught in some of the more mainstream Christian religions makes a bit light of it, lighter than it should be. Like, no matter what, you'll be accepted. The gates of heaven are open to everyone, no matter what. Not exactly. But Lord Chaitanya accepts all kinds of sinful persons on the one condition that they promise not to indulge in sinful habits after being spiritually initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. And that's why when Prabhupada met religious figures, he would always say, you have to stop eating meat. He didn't get to the wine yet, but maybe he would have gotten there if they just stopped eating meat. Okay, what's next on your list? Okay, let me see. No eating. Okay. What about gambling? You guys okay on that? No Las Vegas? Okay. Sports, you guys like, hang out playing basketball in the monastery? No, we don't do that. Okay. What about wine? Okay, no wine either. So Prabhupada didn't go there because, he wasn't. He knew something about priests who had become alcoholics. He had talked about it. He was told about it. Well, I don't think it's such a common thing, but if I were the Pope, I would use grape juice instead, just to be on the safe side. That's what I would do. Anyway, it's more symbolic anyway, isn't it? Symbolic of the blood of Christ. That's kind of nasty also. Maybe we should turn it into milk, like symbolic of the compassion of Christ. Yeah. You should vote for me for Pope. I'll initiate these new. Well, they'll probably shoot me if I try to go from wine to milk, but I think it's a better idea, personally. It's safer. Okay. In this age, no one can say he is free from sin. It is impossible for anyone to say this, but Lord Chaitanya accepts all kinds of sinful persons on the one condition that they promise not to indulge in sinful habits after being spiritually initiated by the bona fide spiritual master. Oh, you Christians, I wish you had this rule. You only have to follow 4 things. Yes, it's true. No one can be perfectly sinless. You're going to walk on an ant. You're going to have a sinful thought. You're going to say something which is not proper. But at least these 4 things, this is necessary for those pearly gates to open up. You can't just do anything. There's got to be some point where this is considered right and this is considered wrong. The Lord's merciful, yes, he will forgive you, but Prabhupada said, if you continually engage in sinful activities, at some point, the Lord's going to look at you and go, are you a joker or what? Like what's going on here? Like, are you serious about this or not? You want to do this or not? You want to go back to Godhead or not? Just tell me, because I don't want to play around with you. You keep sinning and repenting and sinning and repenting. Like, what's going on here? I don't want to say what the hell going on here, but I don't think the Lord says that. But if you were Saturday Night Live, you would say that. But you get the picture. As Prabhupada said, yes, he forgives you. But you can't just use that forgiveness as a license to continually commit sin. That is worse than the sin you're committing. So we have some issues with Christianity on that one, but we understand that was not the intent of Jesus, that you could unlimitedly sin and still be forgiven unlimitedly. We're also talking about accidental sin. Krishna talks about that in the 9th chapter, text 30, accidental sin. Accidental sin is always forgiven. But if accidental sin happens every Friday at 8 p.m., it's not accidental anymore. So that's a different thing. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. There are a number of instructive points to be observed in this incident of the 2 brothers. In this Kali Yuga, practically all people are of the quality of Jagai and Madhai. If they want to be relieved from the reactions of their misdeeds, they must take shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and after spiritual initiation, thus refrain from those things which are prohibited in these shastras. The prohibitory rules are dealt with in the Lord's teachings to Srila Rupa Goswami. So this is what you do. You do your best, you try. Sometimes you slip up here and there. You're forgiven. But continually slipping up, and expecting that you're going to become Krishna conscious, or very Krishna conscious, that's a different issue. There are standards. So when a devotee becomes serious, at some point they want to take initiation because they want to make a vow to follow certain standards. So that's, the initiation is really a confirmation of what they're already doing, which is chanting 16 rounds and following the four principles. But at some point, a devotee wants to formalize that and say, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to commit. I want to promise this. And that should come at some point in time. We don't want to push anybody into it or make anybody feel guilty, but that's the direction we should go. To come to that point where at some point in our lives we can be steady in 16 rounds and four principles, and we want to commit to that, commit our life to that. And that makes sense. So that's what went on here in this story. During his household life, the Lord did not display... Well, let me see if you have any comments or questions. Okay. I'm going to go back. If I don't go far enough back, I could miss somebody's comment. So, okay. I've gone all the way back. Now we're going down again. And Nadia, when I see your name, if you write a comment and it's long, it just looks like a purport. So if I miss you, let me know. To answer your question about how large a crowd of 100,000 people is, it depends on the crowd density. 5 people per square meter is the max for most concert venues. If they were standing this close together, you would have 20,000 square meters. Okay, I think it's square feet. So we multiply that by 3, is that correct? Oh, there's more. That's about 0.02 square kilometers. But if spread through narrow streets would be quite sprawling. Okay, 0.2 square kilometers. So, all right. Okay, Kaylee, if it's 30 people width, then how many football fields is it? Length. Can you figure that one out? So we get some idea. Here's a street, 30 people across. How far back is 100,000? You can give us football fields or just give us meters, yards, kilometers, miles. We're good with any of it. Thomas Merton wrote on pride, "This is most dangerous when it succeeds in looking like humility. When a proud man thinks he is humble, his case is hopeless." Yes. Hare Krishna. That's self-deception, self-illusion. I was just thinking yesterday, we did a workshop on your relationship with yourself. I was thinking of maybe putting that as an online course, self-paced online course. It's so important. Mark was talking about this renunciate who was like attached to his kopins, his underwear. Well, what was happening? The rat was coming? Oh, that's another story. No, he's thinking, I need a wife. You can protect my copans and do so many things. Yeah, one thing led to another, and he lost his renunciation. Or was that in his mind? He was thinking it out. And it didn't look good once he took it to its logical conclusion. His life was going to become complicated just to protect his copan. Something like that. You once said we shouldn't be detached to that degree when we become detached from the order of the Guru and disobey him. Oh, I'm so detached. I don't even follow the order of my spiritual master because I'm so detached. Yeah, that's funny. We don't want to become that detached. It's like anything good can be used in a bad way. So you can become too detached, or you can become too tolerant, or too humble, become so humble that people abuse you and like that. Yes, Prabhu, that's a Bhakta Burfi. Yes, Prabhu, I'm so detached, I don't even follow the order of my Guru. I'm so detached. That's a Bhakta Burfi if I ever saw one. Maybe not in this lifetime, but what about the past ones? I forgot what we were talking about. If I go a long time and then I come back to your questions, I need the sentence to start regarding this or regarding the statement this. Then I know. I can't remember what this would be a relationship. What not in this lifetime? What about past ones? I'm not sure. You have to tell me. Jyotirmayi. Achyutananda says, how can Jagan Madai be used as an example of Mahaprabhu delivering the most fallen? If there really is, if you want to say, if they really are actually Jai and Vijay, are these pastimes considered to be under Yogamaya's influence? Well, it's kind of like you're in a movie, Achyutananda, and you're watching a movie, and this guy's about to get killed, and the hairs are standing on end, and your friend's going, that's just fake, the camera's right there. These guys are like friends, and they're just pretending. And that blood, it's just ketchup, and, that scar, they just did that with makeup. And you're like, oh, really? Oh, let's get out of here. This is boring. Yeah. So that's not the way you look at the Lord's Leela, because when Jagai and Madai are being Jagai and Madai, they're actually being Jagai and Madai. It's not like, hey, I'm Jai and Vijay, I'm just like faking it here. It's not like that. But they're taking on the mood and mentality. And Lord Chaitanya wants to teach something, that the others who have that mood and mentality can be delivered. So that's the idea. So we can't think of it, it's just Leela. I mean, sometimes, but when Mahaprabhu's or the Lord is trying to make a point, we can't say, it's just Leela, They're actually his eternal associates and whatever, It's just a play. But, Arjuna, he's just playing, he's asking those questions, but, what's the point? We don't need to read Bhagavad Gita because Arjuna's pure devotee and he's just, no. But he's put in illusion. So now when he's in illusion, he's actually in it. And he has all the tendencies of a conditioned soul at that point, even though he's Krishna's friend and eternally liberated. But now for the time being, he's at least exhibiting the tendencies of a conditioned soul that Krishna wants him to exhibit, which are relatable to us, so that Krishna can get him out of illusion, which really means Krishna's getting us out of illusion. So when we're analyzing Arjuna and we'll say, well, Arjuna made some bad arguments in the first chapter, second chapter. And then we don't say, well, it's not really Arjuna. It's just like Krishna just made it happen. That's, behind the scenes info, But while you're watching the movie, you just get the message of the movie, And after the movie, you can go behind the scenes and, find out how they did everything. So Krishna is definitely teaching through Arjuna. He's definitely, Mahaprabhu was teaching through Jagai and Madai, and he wants us to learn it, and he wants us to accept the principles that these two Brahmins are fallen. Fallen Brahmins can become Krishna conscious. The two Brahmins have had an extremely sinful life. People with extremely sinful lives can become Krishna conscious. That's what we're supposed to learn. So we're not supposed to go behind the stage and go, "Oh, that's my brother. He's got this mask on." Like, ha, ha, ha. Everyone's like, "Ah!" And you're just laughing. It's not the way you take Leela. You want to take the lesson. No. Now, Jagai and Madhai are acting like Jagai and Madhai. This is like real. This is actually happening. Real. They surrendered. It's the transformation is taking place. Of course, you could say, well, look at, they got transformed very quickly, very fast. And that's true. It's usually not that fast. But one thing we can say is they were, they got a lot of mercy. They got Nityananda's full, unalloyed waves of mercy. And they were serious about it, and they took it seriously. And if you read how they lived after this, you could see how serious they were about Krishna consciousness. So that's the message we should take. If you're as serious about surrendering and as repentant about surrendering as they are, you're going to do really well in your Krishna consciousness. That's how we should take it. Otherwise, it's kind of like, it's just a play. Don't worry about it. That's not the intention of the stories. Christe says, is it why Krishna's body is black in Kali Yuga as well? I heard it yesterday, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Black in Kali Yuga. What body are you talking about? Krishna came black in Dwapara Yuga. In Kali Yuga, he's golden. Satya Yuga, white, red, and Treta Yuga. So you're referring to Krishna being black, taking everyone's sin? No, but that's Krishna's natural color. So this black of Mahaprabhu was temporary. One more curiosity question. At the moment of initiation, the spiritual master and the sacrifice take previous karma. So what if the devotee is already in one's deathbed and gets initiation? Does one leave one's body with absolute clean karma? Prabhupada said, it's like a fan. You unplug it gradually. Even, if you take Charnamrita, it frees you from sin. You see Tulsi, it frees you from sin. You eat prasadam, it frees you from sin. You chant the holy name, frees you from sin. You see the devotee, it frees you from sin. It's also dependent on your ability to receive these things. So it may not just, immediately go away, every trace of it. It takes a little while. But you're already chanting Hare Krishna, so already so much sin is going away. So basic idea is take initiation when you're ready. We had a devotee who we thought last week was dying, and we gave her initiation just because, that would be the best thing for her in that situation. Fortunately, she's still alive, and it looks like she's going to recover. She got better. On the day of her initiation, she got better. I haven't gotten sick. So I'm not sure where the karma went. Or maybe I'm going to get it later. I don't know. Or maybe I've been doing some good chanting. I don't know. But she's doing better. So I think we should not try to overthink it, but understand initiation as a reformatory process to help you in your chanting, in your spiritual life, but not absolutely like you can't become a pure devotee if you don't get initiated, because you're already doing what initiated devotees do. You're chanting, following the principles. Does that make sense? If we go into initiation thinking, well, if I get initiated, I'll become free from sin, but Becoming free from sin is a byproduct of just all the processes of bhakti. And it's more, Prabhupada said, the guru takes the sin when the disciple commits sin, like after they're initiated. Then that's more, Prabhupada said the guru takes the karma. Shastras say that, but Prabhupada also specifically said when he commits sin, the guru has to suffer. So you could say that's a distinct category, an additional distinct category. Some may say it's the only category. Some may say Krishna, the fire, Vishnu also takes the sin. But becoming free from sin is more of a byproduct than the main process. Main process is to awaken our attachment to Krishna and taste. And the sin is a byproduct, and becoming free from sin is necessary. It's purifying, so that we can go to higher stages. But so many things you're doing already are freeing you from sin. Okay, we have a comment by Kelly. I would say that a Christian sinning on the promise of forgiveness would be similar to a Vaishnava sinning on the strength of chanting. A big no-no, yeah. That is, and the question is, do they see that way? What you say is true. It is the same. But do they see it that way? Jenny says, just like you making so many advancements, that I don't understand. In relation to what? Well, Jenny, what were we talking about? I forgot. Bhakta Burfi. You don't know Bhakta Burfi? Yeah. Go to any temple in the Hare Krishna movement. Bhakta Burfi lives there. There's at least one. A crowd of 100,000 people, which is 30 people wide, will be 3,333 people deep if each of these people uses a space of about 18 inches deep to stand in the line of people. That would be 16.7 football fields long, 5,000 feet, almost a mile. All right, so a mile is, I don't know if you've ever seen a mile. I mean, maybe you look out on the ocean in Hawaii and they're surfing a mile out in the winter at Waimea Bay, per se. I think that's a spot that waves break a mile out or half a mile. Most of us don't even have the ability to see a mile, do we? But it's basically Rath Yatra, 16 blocks of people at Rath Yatra. Okay, we're going down Fifth Avenue. Well, Fifth Avenue is wider, but they only give us half. So we're 16 blocks, you're 16 blocks away from the cart. You can barely see it. Yeah, that's a good crowd. That ought to scare somebody. Especially if they're screaming bloody murder, which it sounds like they were. Okay, so we learned something today. If you get 100,000 people, 30 wide, it's almost a mile. This is what confused me regarding Krishna being black in Kali Yuga. I need to listen to the recording. Yeah, let me know what it was. Maybe it's something esoteric that Mahaprabhu turns black occasionally. Or is it Kalki? Kalki's not black, I don't think. I thought Kalki was white. It does make sense. Sometimes my mind gets hooked on details. Not as important, yeah. If you have questions, make sure the questions are of value. They can actually benefit you beyond your curiosity. Curiosity questions are eh. Personally speaking, getting initiation feels like I have some more strength to keep my promises, maybe my will to maintain my vows, and for sure, a lot of mercy. Yeah, it's a confirmation. So I think that taking initiation does make some difference, yeah. There's definitely makes a difference spiritually, and it makes a difference psychologically because you actually officially vowed to do it. So Charna says, I don't know if I pronounce your name right. Charna. Jonas says, I know that in Srila Prabhupada's time, some devotees got the initiation even if they didn't follow all the vows after Prabhupada told them what to follow. So why in this time we have to be like Paramahansa to get initiation? Well, Paramahansa, not exactly Paramahansa. Can the mercy of the Guru somehow help the devotee to overcome some obstacles after initiation? Yes, but Prabhupada was very lenient in the beginning with initiation. And, you could question why, and someone could say that my feeling was that he thought if people were willing to make vows, they would follow them. So it was kind of like you say, okay, maybe I'm not so qualified, but I get the initiation, and now in this ceremony I make the vow, and with the mercy of the Guru I can do it. But it didn't work. And as the movement was progressing, Prabhupada was always saying we have to be more strict about initiation because people are going away and we can't give it so easily. So then Prabhupada said, okay, no one. I got it after I was in the temple 1 month, 2 months. I was in the temple 2 months and I got it. And prior to my initiation, I think if we would have gone back 6 months or a year, maybe 2 weeks would have been enough to be in the temple. So now I was at the point of 2 months, and then Prabhupada later said at least 6 months. And I know some gurus will make you wait for 7 years just to make sure that you're ready. So the idea is that was we didn't have good experience with that, and it kind of became a joke. Prabhupada said, make a joke of it. You take a vow and you don't follow it. So then Prabhupada said, follow the 4 principles and 16 rounds for at least 6 months, and depending on the Guru, and when the Guru thinks you're ready. So Paramahansa, that's a different thing. Paramahansa would be like 192 rounds and way more than 4 regulative principles, like maybe 400. So it really is, we really have to, see it not as something impossibly difficult. But if you have a spiritual master, you take shelter, you hear from him, you serve him with your abilities, you're always engaged in Krishna consciousness, you have good sadhana, nice rounds, chanting, you'll be able to do it, to take those vows and be able to follow them. Yes, by his mercy. So it works both ways, that you, by his mercy, you qualify for initiation, and by his mercy, you continue to qualify. So that's how we see it. And so, yes, everyone should aspire to take initiation, but when they're ready, not before. And because when you take initiation, it's like you're officially telling the devotees and your spiritual master and Krishna, this is what I'm going to do. So isn't it good to do that? If it's actually something you can do, isn't it good to do that? And won't that give you strength? Yeah, it will. If you actually make the vow wholeheartedly, it will give you strength. More strength. But to make the vow and not be certain, what are the principles? No intoxication, I hope I can do it. No illicit sex, I don't know about that one. No gambling, yeah, I think I can do it. No meeting, yeah, that's okay. How many rounds? 16, I hope I can do 16 every day. That's not initiation. That's pre-initiation, till you can take shelter of a spiritual master before you can follow all those principles. By taking shelter, taking his guidance, you come to a point where you can follow. And then when you're sure you can follow, then, no, I want to officiate this. I want to connect formally. I want to make this. And then the ceremony is there. You make your vows. You get a name which identifies you as a servant of Krishna or a servant of Krishna's devotee. And that's glorious. But it's not glorious to do it before you're ready. And I always tell devotees, don't think you can't take shelter of a guru before you're ready to take initiated. That's how you take initiation. That's how you become ready. So you may be following 3 principles, chanting 4 rounds. You can aspire to take shelter of a guru at that point and say, I'm aspiring. I would like to take initiation from you. And then by that connection that you make, you'll gradually become ready. So that's it. So that's my answer. You can do it, Charna. Just keep going. And if you want some service, I'm the giver of service. Anyone who wants service, just call me up. I can give you service. We have so much. We're trying to develop a whole series of online courses. It takes so much time. You have to edit the videos. You have to put text on the videos. You have to write text. You have to edit text. Proofread it. Then you have to make sure there's no mistakes in the videos. You line the course up. Each lesson makes sense systematically with the next. The exercises are clear. It's a lot of work. That's one of the main things I'm working on. So that's a lot of work, and we can work on more than one course simultaneously. And then what to speak of when we write the Prabhupada book? That's like a whole other thing in editing and rewriting and marketing people and graphic designers. It's all about outreach. So if you want service, that's very, very powerful if you have service. So your whole life is just not engaged in your occupation, but you actually have other things to do when you have time. That's a real blessing. And that helps a lot. So, Hare Krishna to all of you. It's time to go. Today's Ekadasi here in the East Coast of America. Happy Ekadasi for all Ekadasi followers. If you like, you can chant more rounds. Do some austerity. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Gauranga Nityananda.